Welcome to the Traveling Professors. I'm Professor Bob.
And I'm Professor Sheri.
And together we are
the Traveling Professors.
Welcome to show number 117 of the Traveling Professors. Today we're doing part 2 of our walking tour of Chichen Itza. So we'll be seeing the rest of the site, and we'll be beginning with the Temple of the Warriors. And then we will move to the Caracol, or the Observatory, and then finish up with the Nunnery area. Here's our map of Chichen Itza, and you can see what we covered last time. But we're going to be starting with the Temple of the Warriors here. Then we will go down along the side to past the group of the 1,000 columns. We will then move over through the crowds to what is known as the Ossuary, which actually used to be known as the Temple of the High Priest. Then we head across an open plaza to one of the iconic pieces of Chichen Itza, and that is the Observatory, or the Caracol. And then we will finish up by going to the Nunnery, which has actually, this area with the Nunnery is associated with the Puuc architecture of what most Mayan cities used, because remember, most of the architecture of Chichen Itza that we've been seeing is actually Toltec. Then we will leave. So what we will be doing is go back this direction, go past the Temple of the Deer, and then go to the parking area. We're not going into the museum or the cafeteria or the gift shop. And from there we will go to a regular cenote and have lunch. And that'll be the end of our day. So here Sheri and I are when we first arrived at Chichen Itza. And you can see on the broad open area, there's on the corner, the Castilia, the Pyramid of Kukulkan. And then right there in the middle is a long distance shot of the Temple of the Warriors. And then here we are finishing up at the Venus platform, heading closer. And you can see the number of people out in front. But we eventually open up in an area where there's not a lot of people. Now this particular temple, I want you to be aware of the fact that the columns that you see here would have housed a roof over the whole thing and covered this building right in front of it. And at the top, that would have been covered as well. And something I haven't mentioned is the fact that all these buildings would have been covered with stucco and painted. Now, the Temple of the Warriors complex consists of this large step pyramid in the front right there, and it's flanked by rows of carved columns depicting warriors. And this complex is very similar to what is known as Temple B in the Toltec capital of Tula in central Mexico, and indicates some of the cultural contact between the two regions. The one at Chichen Itza, however, was constructed on a much larger scale. And at the top of the stairway on the pyramid summit there and leading to the entrance of the temple is a chalk mole statue, which is actually used for sacrificial purposes. So here we are getting a little closer, and here we are, we're right at the front. Now they're not just columns. Here's a close-up. They are hieroglyph columns holding up the roof. Now here is an example of the Toltec warriors. This was a picture taken in Mexico City at the Archaeological Museum. But to see this type of warrior statue, you have to go behind the Temple of the Warriors. Now, you can't climb the stairs, but if you could, now in this picture you can kind of see in the middle at the top the chalk mole statue. But here's a nice shot of it from one of the guidebooks that I have. And so you see chalk mole reclining, and they would have done sacrifices here. But this would have been in an enclosed building. And then here's an aerial view showing the Temple of the Warriors. To the top of the Temple of the Warriors, you would be able to look down and see this. This is a row of columns, and this is known as the group of 1,000 columns. This is the south wall of the Temple of the Warriors, a series of these exposed columns. When the city was inhabited, it would have also had a roof over the top of it, and there is some discussion that this may have been part of a marketplace. Now back down on the ground, and you can see the restrictions. There's the fence holding us back. You can look down that direction. And then I was able to go in and take some pictures here. Now Sheri got a little sunstruck here, so she had to sit down for a little while and drink some fluids, and then she was okay after that. But there's like 1,000 of these things, and so then here's a shot where you could walk through. If you walk through, there are other buildings back behind. I mean, we were here in Chichen Itza for about 3.5, 4 hours. I think you could stay all day pretty easily. And here is looking the other direction. We're going to be heading off this direction, as a matter of fact. And then here is what I was talking about. There are vendors everywhere. And I think this is a really nice situation, because this would have probably been typical of the city. You would have had places where people were selling things. And there's plenty of locations that you could do that. It would not necessarily have to be into the main plaza, but it would certainly be an extensive area. And then here we are back behind the Castillo temple, heading into the rest of the site. Now, as we start walking through the growth in the back area, we're heading towards what is known as the South Group, and that is the Ossuary Group. And the area has all these odd-looking little buildings. Here is one of the small buildings here. This is known as the Platform of Venus, and it would have had a building on the top of it. There's also this very large building. Now, this is known as the ossuary itself. Now, depending on your guidebook, early guidebooks called it the Temple of the High Priest. Now they call it the ossuary. It's like the Temple of Kukulkan. It's a step pyramid. It's just on a smaller scale. Like its larger neighbor, it has 4 sides with staircases on each side, and the top would have been a temple. At the center of there's an opening in the pyramid that leads down to a natural cave about 39 feet below, or 12 meters. This cave was excavated in the 1800s, and because skeletons were found and artifacts such as jade beads, the archaeologist Edward Thompson named the structure the High Priest's Temple. But today, archaeologists believe it was used as a tomb, but not for people that were priests. It could have been other people that were involved in this. So here's some views all the way around it, and then as we walk away, we come by one of the circular platforms. And believe it or not, archaeologists have never named it. It's just simply called the circular platform. But all these appear to be oriented towards the other cenote that's in the area. The cenote of Salak, which is actually the word for iguana. As we head away from the ossuary group, we can see some reconstruction being done on another area. And when we got a little closer to it, you could see that they were working on restoring a ball court, but a much smaller size. But we'll see that on the way back. And what we end up seeing is this platform with the Caracol, the snail, as it's called, the observatory at Chichen Itza. It's a round building on a large square platform, and its name comes from a stone spiral staircase on the inside. And the structure, with its unusual placement on the platform and its round shape, the others are usually rectangular, in keeping with Mayan practice. It's theorized this was a proto-observatory with doors and windows aligned on astronomical events, specifically around the path of Venus as it traverses the heaven. And remember, the Toltecs are of that group that believe that Quetzalcoatl will return when Venus transits the sun, or Venus in transit, which occurs once every 52 years. So it's a little troublesome. So they want to keep track of it. This was a distant shot. This is as close as I could get to it. And it really isn't, it looks like an observatory that we use today, but I'll show you a recreation of what that looks like. And here's the steps. Put it on telephoto so I could see it a little better. Here's a little nicer view of it from the front of it. If you went inside, this is what you would see. You'd have this narrow opening, and it would then go around, and then it could spiral up to the different levels. And then here's a view of it from the side as we're heading towards another group of buildings. And I've, of course, managed to find an aerial view of it, which makes it a little easier to deal with. But for all the technical stuff, you'll enjoy this. Here is what the artist's rendition of the site would have looked like. And you see it's more like a bell tower than it is a round observatory that we would use today. It's just that those pieces of it have collapsed into what you see. And then if you take a chart of what everything they're viewing, this is what you see. And you see all these different time periods and locations where the light coming through, or the sun setting, or the stars rising, or the stars setting deal with different aspects. It's not as concerned with the equinox or the solstices. It's concerned with what in the world Venus is doing. And of course, there's a lot of trees in the area, but of course those would not have been there. They would have been removed or cut back, and of course it sits higher up. So that's a great observatory. Again, one of the things I missed about not being able to walk up that. But now we are heading for our last group of buildings to look at. This is actually La Moñas, part of the Chichen Itza. This is a complex of buildings constructed in the Puuc architectural style. It's also known as Old Chichen or Chichen Viejo. And one of the buildings that you come to is this one here, which is known known as Temple of Three Lintels. And you can see the different style of carvings on them. Again, remember they would have been painted. And then you look across, and this is what referred to as the church, or La Iglesia, and you see all of these sculptures jutting out from the side of it. And we're going to walk right through the middle between the Temple of the Three Lintels and the church to look at the backside. So we go through that area, and here's the backside, and you can see the masks all the way around the side, up on the top, and then there's one of the areas where you have the platforms for various things. And here's another one of the buildings in this area, this quadrangle, and they refer to it as the Nunnery, but it really is a governmental palace with some temple structures. And this particular one has a carving at the very top of it of Itzamna, the Lord of Life, and that is an old Mayan classic period god. There's no association with the Toltecs. And if you get a closer look, let's look at the masks on the side here to the right side of the entrance, and you can see this and imagine what that would be like painted. And then looking up, you can see Itzamna, the Lord of Life. That would have been painted with a lot of greenery on it. And then you have, then off to the left of this building, you have another one, and it has a broken area in the back, so you can go through the front lintel and see what the jungle looks like in this area. But this has this carving. You see how the carving is so much different from that we had been looking at. And then here's a look across to the little plaza area, and here's a little video, a panoramic view of this nunnery area.
Mexican annual country happens like this.
It's a blessing.
It is.
It is a blessing.
Yeah, we like to never accept this, and so I mean they find stuff in the first and second century sometimes. And then we watch one. It's called Green Mountain Man. Oh look, the iguana.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, little guy. I wish I had some banana for you. Then you would be my friend. You're not very good.
Now we are heading back to our car. Now here's where I make a mistake. We're walking by the Caracol here on the right hand side, and I said we haven't been to the Cenotes yet, and they said no, we're going to go to one that's a little bit down the road. And here's the mistake. When we were at the spot where it had the sign saying Sacred Cenote, instead of saying let's go down this way, we could have had that discussion at this point. The guide thought that we just wanted to see a cenote where you could swim, and that is not what we were looking for. In addition, this would have been the time also to talk about, aren't we going to go back to the visitor center? We did go nearby it, but I assume we would go in. Should have said something about going in. So if you're getting along on your tours and you've got extra time, bring up what you want and make sure that that you and the guide are on the same track. Now on the way back, we then went by this area where they were doing construction. So this is a little distance shot, and here is a close-up, a little better view of the ball court, which is much smaller. And then here is some of the other, there's a temple that they've been working on, and one of the walls which have the corbelled arches, which are associated with the old Mayan, not with the Toltecs. Then we go by down the tree line. This is one of the various vendor areas where you could get food and drink, and then we ultimately reached the entrance and head to our car. At this point, the mistake is very clear to me. We're not going to see the sacred well, and we've already left the facility. So we go out and get into our car. There was just the guide, the driver, and Sheri and I. That was the whole tour. And we paid $360 or so for the whole thing. That will include the meal. It would have included going in and swimming in the cenote if I hadn't misplaced Sheri's suit in my backpack. But so we went down the road about 2 or 3 miles and came to one of these cenotes. Really nice facility. And here's a view from the edge of it, looking down. And then here is a video.
You could take a video of it.
And here is the cafeteria where Sheri and I ate, and this is our meal. They had fish and all sorts of vegetables and nice desserts. It was really a wonderful time. Sheri and I hope you enjoyed the tour. Please come by our YouTube channel at Bob Packett, and please subscribe and leave some comments. Thank you very much. I've been doing podcasting on history for over 15 years. I've got over 4,000 shows, and I've done CDs, which of course can be sent out as USBs. So if you would really like to get more on history for free, then come by my website, as you see here, historyaccordingtobob.com, and see what's there. So thank you very much again.